Hello, everyone. I'm here with Adrian Ashkenazy, class of 1996, and really importantly, the co-founder of the HJAA. Adrian, I appreciate you taking a few moments over the holidays to talk about this overseer run and kind of what's going on at the university.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Sam. Well, look, we are very excited about the fact that there are independent candidates who are choosing to run for the Board of Overseers to bring some fresh perspectives to the way that the university is governed. And so I was really excited about the opportunity to spend some time with you here and maybe ask you a few foundational questions, if that's okay.
I would love that.
So, okay, good, good. So, I mean, the first one really is the most obvious one, which is if you could just, tell me in your own words, tell us in your own words, why it is that you want to run for the Board of Overseers for Harvard.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to. So, I mean, I think like a lot of alums, I've been watching what's been going on in the university for a long time, but particularly since 10/7, and been somewhat dismayed about the direction, we've seen on campus. And there's a lot of aspects we can get into that, in terms of how to approach it and the details there. I've kind of outlined it a lot in my kind of campaign overview. But I think a lot of it comes down to, the one questions around free speech, and two, most importantly, I think as part of that is kind of fairness and the application of the rules consistently across the board, right? And I think what we saw, in the last month, which really I think came to a real head since 10/7, was one that there are serious problems about, speech on campus and how it's being treated. And then two, I think on top of that, the equal application of rules and how kind of the university is responding differently in different scenarios to different groups. And so I think like a lot of alums watching a lot what's been going on, and I've come to the conclusion with a lot of people. I said I've done the normal things, right? Like a lot of alums I know, I've said, hey, I'm not going to donate to the university anymore until things change, until you're able to move the ball forward on some of these obviously key issues. But what I kind of noticed in a lot of my friends and cohort is a lot of people said beyond doing that, they're saying we're just opting out, right? We're just not going to engage with Harvard. We're going to donate to other causes and universities. People are saying Harvard's a lost cause. And candidly, I think that's both defeatist and really kind of sad, right? So it's defeatist in that I don't think the university. I think it's a fundamentally really important and good place. I have incredibly fond memories of it. I also think it matters to the world. It's a beacon of American education. It's an important institution bringing together great minds and viewpoints from around the world. And I both don't want to give up on it, and I also think it's really important as an institution to try to preserve and kind of right and bring in the right direction in terms of where it can be and where I think it was for literally hundreds of years, right? So from my perspective, the reason to run for Board of Overseers is it actually is something that as an alum you have access to do beyond just saying I'm opting out or I'm not going to donate anymore. Like there aren't that many opportunities as an alum to really drive or help drive the agenda or the conversation. And I think that running for the Board of Overseers as a write-in candidate is one of those things you can do. Two, and this has actually been the interesting, surprising one to me, Adrian, is, when I started doing this, my kind of assumption was, and what I've been told, was that the Board of Overseers isn't that actually powerful. It's a nice symbolic thing. It's a platform to speak from. It's a way to bring people together. You get to be on the inside versus the outside. I think Harvard really needs help on the inside. It's very resistant to outside forces. So you need to be on the inside to really help move the ball forward. But, the more I've dug in, it actually has quite substantial power over appointments, over different types of review, et cetera. So the more I've learned, the more I've come to appreciate that, running for the Board of Overseers isn't just a symbolic move. It is partially that, but there actually is real power attached to it that I think gives me some optimism and hope that, if a group of people who are willing to put the work in, which I am, right, can get onto the board, that they really can make a difference. So that's been a heartening thing, in the last few weeks to have discovered.
Yeah, well, just responding to some of the things that you've said, I have had many friends of mine tell me that they think that we need to walk away from Harvard and institutions like Harvard. And my response, like yours, which is what motivated me to help co-found this group of alumni, is is we really can't afford societally to walk away from Harvard or universities like Harvard, um, these places still funnel its graduates or their graduates into leadership positions in this country,
Yep.
and that I find that deeply troubling. Um, I also wanted to ask you how you would respond to the notion um, that uh, that an administrator I know has said about our alumni group, which is 3,000 upset Harvard alumni aren't going to move the needle, verbatim. And I found that really, I find that really upsetting. And I know that there are members of our group that find it so upsetting that they're determined to grow our group to 20,000 people because they're convinced that there are at least that many Jewish alumni of the entire university. So if their job was to incentivize us to do more, they certainly have. But I'm wondering, as somebody who's running for the board of overseers, how would you respond to that type of, I guess I would call it institutional apathy? What is your response to
Well,
that?
here's what I basically say. I think Harvard, a few things. One is Harvard is designed as a university to be effectively pretty insulated from the outside. And that includes from alumni, right? You think about the strategy, the way the corporation works, the way the presidency works, even the way the HAA and the overseers work. It's all meant, and it's actually very different than other universities. A lot of other universities have tons of boards. There are lots of ways to influence them. Harvard is actually quite centralized, right, in this respect at the most senior levels. There are other parts that aren't so much. But as a result, and I don't think that's a bad thing, to be clear. Like if you think about the idea of an academy, right, the idea saying, hey, we're not going to be swayed by outside forces, by politics, and we're going to set ourselves up with a huge endowment and kind of an like to so that we can resist outside forces. Again, I don't think that's universally bad, right? I think it is bad when you have some challenging ideas, we'll call them, right, and you've gone in a certain direction and you're not open to feedback, right? But I do think that's part of the reason I care about running for the overseers board is I do think you have to be on the inside to affect change in an organization like this. Now,
Right.
to the thing about a few thousand upset alums, here's the reality. It's way more than a few thousand, right? I think the reality is, I would argue, my understanding is to get elected to the Overseers Board, you need about 30,000 ish votes. About 30,000 people vote out of 300,000 alums of Harvard University. So, really, what HAA is HAA is representing a very small segment of alums who are involved in the Harvard Club of New York or Boston, who are, very bought into the HAA machine. And again, HAA, I don't want to throw them completely under the bus. They, I'm sure, play some good roles in places. But I actually think the reality is Harvard's only really hearing from this 10% of alumni. So to me, yes, I am Jewish. And I do think that, 10/7 has been a particular moment for Jews to wake up in a lot of ways. It's hard to miss, right, if you're Jewish. But I actually think the real story is it's not about even 20,000. I actually think it's like way more than that, right? And I think the key is like getting to the scale and kind of putting the right principles in front of the university where they can hear the message, right? And kind of really thinking about the system as when you do have to work from the inside, right? It isn't just, so. I guess the kind of way I would respond to you is saying like that administrator, while cynical, might not be wrong, right? That 3,000 upset alums doesn't move the needle, right? But I think what they might be missing is that the problem that they're facing and the issue is not coming from 3,000 alums. It's probably coming from a majority of alums, right? If not a super majority of the alums. It's just most of them don't have a way to have a voice or be engaged. And so they are doing the thing that a lot of people do, which is they're saying, look, I'm going to give to other institutions. I care about Harvard. It's too far gone. It's not worth the uphill battle. It's designed to be resistant to my feedback anyway. So why engage, right? And I think I'm trying to be, I know you're doing this too, is kind of shake people out of that zone and say, no, 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 this does matter. It's the number one academic brand in the world, right? It does bring together more future leaders than anywhere else. It sets the tone for the rest of American, in some places even global education. It is worth fighting for, and we have to do it smartly, is the way I
Yeah.
would think about it.
Look, I agree with you. I think it's worth fighting for. So I'm going to keep going. Um,
Excellent.
so look, that was a great answer. Thank you. So, um, how how would you define, let's say, your top three core values for folks that were considering you for the board of overseers?
I mean, they're going to be boring, right? Because I think they're actually in like a way that I think that everyone. I mean, again, I think a lot of people would agree with. Like one, honesty, right? Like I just believe in honesty, full stop. And, I think the reality is that's being direct with people, that's giving feedback where you need to give feedback, that's speaking your truth, right? I'm not one to kind of go around the corners on these things. And I think that's really important. It's kind of probably the first thing that comes to mind. The second, which I think has been challenging recently, right, in terms of the university's actions, is fairness. I think there's a very broad range of actual policies that a university can adopt, right? I personally very deeply believe in free speech. That has not been the direction of the university for many years, and I understand. Like, I could respect a difference in approach to my, personal beliefs, but what I don't stand for, what I can't stand for, is the unequal application of rules, right? And I think that's really what we've seen in the last, several months that has been most upsetting among many upsetting things, right? So I think those are two really core ones. And then I guess if you ask me to list a third off the top of my head that kind of does go hand in hand, but I think is a little bit distinct, is like academic integrity or just integrity in general.
Hmm.
Again, we set examples for the people around us, right? If you think about the things that we need as a society to operate well, I think we need to be a fair society. We need to be an honest society. We need to be a society of high integrity. And I think if you think about Harvard as a beacon that leads on those things, the administrators and the people on the table, I think, have to really have all those things.
Right. Very good. Well, I guess we've been on for a while now, so let me ask you a final question, which is,
Yeah.
if you were going to share something about you personally, that may not necessarily be so obvious to the outside world, but that you think would be meaningful for folks to know about and would maybe help them connect with you a little bit on a personal level, what would that be?
Well, the interesting one I might go to, which is one is I'm actually extremely dyslexic. So
Oh,
when you think about how my path to
Harry,
Harvard,
is
right,
that
and
better?
then
Is that better? Oh, sorry. No, I
I would leave
understand
it
that.
to Harvard. Yeah, keep it. There you go. Very funny. Got it. The No, you'd have to flip yourself. That would
Yeah.
be what it would
Okay.
get me.
Okay.
No, and so I think like it's interesting. My path to Harvard and beyond was a complicated one. It was a real growing experience, I think, for a lot of people to be in an environment where like I didn't learn how to read until third grade. I caught up. I did very well in school, and I'm thrilled. I graduated from Harvard, magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa. Like, I figured it out. But I think the journey of having academic struggles, having to confront, challenges, right? Going through the whole cycle. I think everyone kind of knows the freshman year imposter syndrome where you're like, how am I, like, these are the best people in the world. Like, am I good enough? Right. But I think I had that a little bit extra going through. And, I think, when I think about these campaigns, I think a lot of the things that I learned in academically and beyond in my career about just, look, you're not always going to be right, but you always make your shot, speak your principles, be true to yourself. Those types of things. I think I did get. A lot of times you have blessings are curses and curses are blessings, and I think that was one that I think from an academic perspective, thinking about Harvard, like was a really interesting journey for me, and I think has shaped a lot of who I've become in a lot of ways.
Hmm. Well, I have some questions for you about that when we're done with our interview, because I don't want to bore everybody with my questions, but I find that really interesting. I'm really happy that you shared that, because I have some folks in my life, who may have some similar experiences to you, and I would love to talk to you
Well, we should talk.
offline.
We should talk more about it for sure. But I
Okay.
guess I'd close by saying is that if and when you find some spelling mistakes on my campaign materials, I apologize in advance. The intentions are good, and it's not because I'm not trying.
Very good. All right, Sam.
Adrian, thank you
Well,
so much for taking the
yeah,
time.
and thanks for making the time for me. And I will call you after to talk about that other thing.
You got it. Talk to you
All
soon.
right,
Thank
Sam. Take
you.
care. Thanks.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Bye.